Ever stop and think about how much we rely on software every day? I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's everywhere. Phones, cars, TVs. Heck, probably even your coffee maker these days.
And the thing is, most of us, we don't even notice it, right? It's like this invisible force running everything.
Until it goes wrong.
Exactly. Like when you get that dreaded blue screen of death, or, well, today's topic, a recent article about a couple of really nasty software vulnerabilities.
Mm.
And let me tell you, these are big ones.
Yo, yeah, these are the kind of vulnerabilities that keep cybersecurity experts up at night.
So let's dive right in. First up, this thing called Microchip ASF. Sounds pretty innocuous, right?
It does, but it's used in a lot of critical infrastructure. We're talking industrial equipment, factory systems, even some Internet of Things devices.
And it's got this vulnerability, CVE 2024-7490. And get this, it's got a CVSS score of 9.5.
Yeah, that's about as serious as it gets. A 10 is a perfect score.
So for those of us who aren't, fluent in cybersecurity speak, break down what that score actually means. Why should we care about a 9.5?
Okay, so the CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, it's basically a way to assess the severity of a vulnerability. And a 9.5, that's like finding out the front door to your house is made of tissue paper.
Not ideal.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with this microchip ASF thing? What kind of vulnerability are we talking about here?
This one's called a stack-based overflow. Imagine a bookshelf,
Right.
and you're just piling books on top of each other, higher and higher.
I've been there.
A stack-based overflow is like if someone snuck in a couple of those giant oversized dictionaries while you weren't looking, and suddenly
Boom. Whole shelf collapses.
exactly. And in this case, that collapse could let an attacker basically remotely control whatever device is running that microchip software.
So they could just waltz in and take over? Like, what would be a worst-case scenario here?
Think about where this software is used: industrial control systems, manufacturing plants. Someone could, in theory, shut down power grids, disrupt supply chains, even cause physical damage.
Okay, this is way worse than a bunch of books on the floor. This is getting scary. So what can people do? Is there a fix?
Well, that's the other problem. ASF is old, like really old. It's not actively supported anymore.
So no easy patch to download,
Not really. The best solution is to replace the vulnerable software entirely.
which, knowing how these things go, probably won't happen for a lot of these systems.
It's a real concern. Outdated software is a major security risk, and unfortunately, it's more common than you might think.
Okay, so that's one nightmare scenario. But we're not done yet, are we? There was another vulnerability, right? Something about MediaTek chipsets.
Right. This one's CVE 2024-2017, and it affects a lot of devices that people use daily. Smartphones, routers, smart home gadgets, you name it.
Okay, so we're talking about something potentially in millions, maybe billions of devices out there. What's the issue with this one?
This vulnerability is a zero-click exploit.
Zero click. That sounds ominous. Does that mean what I think it means?
I'm afraid so. You don't have to do anything to get hacked. No clicking on suspicious links, no downloading dodgy files. Someone could exploit this just by having your device within range.
Okay, that is seriously unnerving. How does that even work?
It's an out-of-bounds write issue. Imagine someone's writing in a notebook, but instead of staying between the lines, they start scribbling all over the place. Eventually, they write so much outside the lines, they start writing on the next page.
Overlapping.
Exactly. In this case, that scribbling could overwrite critical parts of a device's memory, letting an attacker inject malicious code.
And I think I read that while there is a patch for this one, the problem is the blueprint for how to exploit it, it's already out in the open.
Right, like publishing the instructions for how to bypass a security system online. Even if you fix the vulnerability, someone might have already used that information to get in.
Okay, so we've got outdated software that's a nightmare to fix, and then we've got this other vulnerability that's basically a ticking time bomb, both pretty terrifying in their own right. So what's the average person supposed to do with this information? What's the takeaway?
It's all about awareness and taking basic precautions. We can't just assume our devices are secure.
So what? Updating our software, even when it's annoying?
Absolutely. Those updates often include important security patches, also strong, unique passwords for all your accounts. I know it's a pain to remember, but it makes a huge difference.
And being careful about what we click on, those phishing emails and whatnot.
Definitely. If something seems off, it probably is.
You know, it's funny, or maybe not so funny, but this whole thing just makes you think, if these two vulnerabilities were big enough to make headlines, how many more are out there just below the surface?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really underscores the constantly evolving landscape of cybersecurity. The more connected our world becomes, the more important it is to stay vigilant and proactive.
Well said. It's a digital jungle out there, folks, and it pays to be prepared. So do yourself a favor, check for updates, change those passwords, and stay aware. Until next time.